Monkeys, baboons, dogs, wildlife in general make a big mess of our neighborhoods when they go scavenging through our rubbish bin bags. Now, to most problems, there is a DIY solution. This is a monkey-proof rubbish bag bin cage. We're making this from steel, so we're going to be welding. Now, for the frame, I've used 30mm by 30mm angle iron. For the strapping, I've used 30mm flat bar that holds the galvanized expanded mesh in place. First step, let's cut some steel. And this is where a chop saw comes onto its own, with the ability to cut at a variety of commonly used miter angles. Take care not to force the disc through the steel, as excessive force can cause the disc to bow, so your cuts may not be straight. Apply just enough force to cut without bogging down the motor. So all our steel is cut. I've got 4 lengths of angle iron cut at 945mm, 4 lengths cut at 645mm, and all the ends have a 45-degree cut. Then there are 4 lengths that are cut square at 500mm. These are going to be the legs, and 6 lengths of flat bar, 950mm each. Then using an angle grinder, I cut 2 945 by 950mm weld mesh rectangles, 4 smaller rectangles measuring 305 by 645mm. I'm going to start by placing my angle iron on the bench and positioning one long and one short side together, using a welding magnet to hold the steel square and in place. I can then tack weld these together and repeat on the other corners until we have our rectangular frame. We're only tack welding at this stage because if I need to adjust anything, a tack weld is a lot easier to grind off than a full weld. I'll come back later and weld these joints together once everything is in place. Now I can take one of the flat bar lengths, position it on the inside corner and clamp it tightly in place with a pair of vice grips. Then carefully bend the flat bar over the other side and again clamp in place with vice grips. Check it is square before tack welding these together on both sides. Exactly the same for the opposite side and one strap in the middle. Now that my frame is tacked together and I'm happy with the shape, I can go in and weld each joint with more than the initial tack weld. I'm clamping the mesh to the outer frame and bending the mesh over the straps to ensure it all fits. I'm tacking along the bottom and then working my way along the straps until the mesh is secured to the frame. Now you may need to adjust your vice grips or G-clamps as you go, just to take up any slack, and use the vice grips to hold the metal together if needs be. Then to close off the ends, hold and tack one of the small expanded metal rectangle pieces on the ends. Now that everything is held together with the tack welds and we're happy with placement, I can complete the welding at regular intervals along the mesh before using the angle grinder to cut the expanded metal to shape. That's the first half of the cage complete. Now do exactly the same and make a second half. Now one of these will be the top half and the other obviously the bottom. So the bottom needs to have the 500mm legs, which are welded on as a butt joint to the 4 corners. Then flip the cage to stand on the feet and position the top half in place. To join the 2 halves, weld on some heavy duty steel hinges that are spaced about 100mm from each edge. Ensure the correct orientation of the hinge before welding. Now before we can install this on the verge, we need to paint the non-galvanized frame as well as all our welds to prevent rust forming and to prolong the life of our DIY. Now prevention is better than cure, and this is how I outsmart rust before it becomes a problem. Now for the best results, metal needs to be free from oils and other contaminants. Scrubbing and wiping all the welds and bare metal with thinners before painting gives me a clean source to work with before applying the paint. Rust is the oxidation of steel as a result of iron coming into contact with water and oxygen. Mild steel that I used for this build, as well as the points on the galvanized steel where I welded, have no protection against the elements. Now rust will form after the first rain and it will continue to rust if left unattended. To drastically slow down rust, a metal treatment is required, and an easy, DIY-friendly treatment is available as a Metal Direct 4-in-1 from Fired Earth. It forms a protective layer. Using a brush helps get the metal directly painted into all the joints. I want to make sure that all the exposed metal is coated. Overcoating time is 6 hours, and we do want a minimum of 2 coats. Now I've opted for the hammered finish in silver, which blends in with the galvanized expanded metal. And I hear that question, why didn't I paint the galvanized expanded mesh? Now, galvanized metal is mild steel metal that has been treated with galvanizing, and so it's already treated against the elements. This is not to say you can't paint galvanized steel for aesthetics. However, the galvanizing treatment does leave an oil residue that, if left outdoors, will dissipate after about 6 months. All that's left now is to install this on the verge by staking the legs into the ground slightly, and depending on your substrate, you may need a 4-pound hammer to help get the irons into the ground. So welding may not be the easiest DIY project around, but if you don't start, you're never gonna get it right. At least now I know I've done what I can to keep the neighborhood neat and to keep the rubbish away from wildlife. Builder stocks all the welding equipment and welding machines needed to complete a project like this. Come on, give it a try. For more videos like this, check out the blog on the website. It's 2 days to stretch your DIY skills. Get to Builders, get it done.